The New York Times recently published a piece about Senator John Fetterman, the Democrat slob from Pennsylvania, on how he is dealing with becoming a U.S. Senator just months after he suffered a really bad stroke. Now, I'm from Pennsylvania, and I remember when the local news told us that, it's nothing. It's really nothing. He's fine. It was just a mild stroke. He'll be okay. And then he went on to campaign. Well, the Times, while they're being uncharacteristically honest about what really happened to Fetterman, you can tell that their ultimate goal was to garner sympathy for the man who would have worked out nicely in an old Geico commercial. The article contains quotes and reports that show Fetterman should never have continued his campaign as to what the Times calls his near-fatal stroke last May. It was near-fatal, including observations that Fetterman knows he likely permanently harmed himself by not taking the proper time to rest and relax and recuperate, and that he has serious mental health challenges, and that his brain is so scrambled he hears Peanuts voices when people talk to him. You remember the teacher in Peanuts? Wah, 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 wah. That's what he hears, folks. Let's get into it. Fetterman was sworn in on January 3rd. He's kept a low profile, but he was seen at the State of the Union address the night before he was taken to George Washington University Hospital in D.C. So he was held over Wednesday night for tests and observation. So we did a story on Thursday about his hospitalization because he felt lightheaded. The guy is a hot mess. So the Times article came out after he was hospitalized on Wednesday for feeling lightheaded, and a spokesman said Thursday night that tests had ruled out a new stroke, but that Fetterman was being held to test for seizures. So from the article, it says, Fetterman, 53, the 6'8" tattooed and goatee Democrat from Pennsylvania who suffered a near-fatal stroke, the Times words, last May, and went on to win one of the most competitive seats, he won, in November's midterm elections, was never going to blend in seamlessly in the marbled corridors of Congress. But his adjustments to serving in the Senate has been made vastly more difficult by the strains of his recovery, which left him with a physical impairment and serious mental health challenges that have rendered the transition extraordinarily challenging, even with the accommodations that have been made to help him adapt. What you're supposed to do to recover from this is do as little as possible, said Adam Gentleson, his chief of staff. Instead, Fetterman was forced to do as much as possible. He had to get back to the campaign trail. It's hard to claw that back. Well, whose fault is that? What the Democratic Party should have done is told him, step down, John, after the stroke and put somebody else in. But they wanted to win. They invested a lot of money in the guy, and they didn't want anything at all to interfere with their dominion. Now, I live in Pennsylvania, and unfortunately, if he has to step down, that means that our governor gets to appoint his replacement. Our governor is a piece of shit who was attorney general during the 2020 election, and he did not respond to any of the thousands of inquiries of election irregularities. And many people believe he was involved in those irregularities. But I digress. The piece goes on. The hearing issues are inconsistent. They often get worse when he is in a stressful or unfamiliar situation. When it's bad, Fetterman has described it as trying to make out the muffled voice of the teacher in the Peanuts cartoon, whose words could never be deciphered. The stroke, after which he had a pacemaker and defibrillator implanted, also took a less apparent but very real psychological toll on Fetterman. I never heard that he had a pacemaker and a defibrillator implanted, and I'm from Pennsylvania. It's called informed consent, folks. You need to know who you're voting for, and the Democrats and the fake news media kept that from the voters. Now, I wasn't going to vote for him anyway, because when he was the lieutenant governor of Pennsylvania, that made him automatically in charge of the parole board, and he wanted to let second-degree murderers free, because they get life here, and he wanted to release a third of all prisoners in the state, and he said, he kept running around saying, it won't harm anybody. Oh, my God. In fact, there wasn't a progressive lunatic plan that he didn't like and try to promote, but a lot of Democrats, they may not have voted for him if they knew what kind of shape he was really in. Now, get this. The Times piece ends pointing out that Fetterman lives by himself. He lives alone in a D.C. apartment, and he drives back to PA alone 4 hours almost every weekend to be with his wife and their 3 children in Braddock, PA. Isn't that reckless? Driving on highways for 4 hours when you can't hear properly and you could pass out at any time because you get lightheaded? How come he can't get a driver? He's put everybody on the road at risk. I'll tell you what, Giselle, his wife, posted a thank you on Thursday on Twitter. And it's interesting to note that she set the tweet up so that only people who she follows or mentions can reply. Now, here's something that's interesting. Greg Price tweeted out, back in October, John Fetterman's campaign released a note from a doctor who donated to his campaign that granted him a clean bill of health and said that he can work full duty in public office. Now, that I do remember, okay, because everybody thought that that was pretty unprofessional and unethical that he would make a public official statement like that as an MD when he was a donor to his campaign. According to the New York Times, he is coming to terms with having permanent brain damage, and this a-hole doctor said that he could work full duty in public office. So the truth is, this guy nearly died when he had his stroke, and it gave him permanent brain damage, and he can't understand people. Did you know that they put monitors up all around the Senate building so that he could read things because he can't hear and understand auditory? So they went to that expense, but they can't hire a driver to drive him 4 hours home every weekend. And from what I heard, the New York Times actually stealth edited out the term special needs in the article regarding the fact that John Fetterman required that special captioning monitors placed throughout the Senate building. All right, so stealth edit means that they removed it or replaced it and didn't make a notation that they did that. So I don't think you need to be from Pennsylvania to agree with me that I'm sick and tired of the government lying to me. I'm sick and tired of their Praetorian Guard and the news media lying to us. In a democracy, you're supposed to be able to vote for who you want to represent you in Washington, D.C. But how are you going to know who to vote for when they constantly lie to you about their characteristics, about their personality, and about past things that they've done, and about their health challenges? All right, so that's it. Thanks a lot. Thanks for spending time with us. We'll see you in the next one.
White snow, red sky.